after a few weeks, I kind of thought we were done. But I met Dan, and he listened to the record, and I told him what I was going for, this kind of West Coast fusion with the underground jazz tone. And he said that he loved what I was going for, but he didn't really think that I had gotten there yet.
But now the album has been out and has been appreciated by people. I mean, how are you feeling about Ultraviolence and your creative time right now?
I mean, you're right. It's amazing to be talking to you after it's been released. And, you know, it's funny. It's not about it being number one. I think it's about it being received in the right way and just people really liking it. And I have to say, usually I don't really care. I don't think too much about it. But I'm really, really grateful. I'm happy that people get what I was going for and they love it. I'm really in love with the record. So I'm happy.
We could tell that you were building something that you were very, very proud of, because there were whispers and rumors of you talking very openly about the album during the making of it and how you were just loving the whole process. And I mean, working with Dan from Black Keys, who's, in my opinion, he's one of my favorite people to talk to, just based on his dry sense of humor, let alone the music he makes with Patrick. Well, he's so dry, right? I don't know how you keep a straight face when you're working with him, man.
He is so dry. He's really quiet, and he's really funny.
He has the best laugh in modern rock as well.
You think so?
I love his laugh, man.
He'll love that.
I love his... No, don't say that's going to sound weird. I spoke to Zane. He said, you have a wonderful laugh. How was it? How was the whole experience? Did you have a chance to kind of really just bury yourselves away and blow up the outside world? Were you able to do that?
Yeah, we were. I mean, it was funny because I was writing in California, and then I went back to New York to Electric Lady Studios, where I started just producing the record myself, and had like an amazing session drummer, and had my guitar player Blake Stranathan from my band. And after a few weeks, I kind of thought we were done. But I met Dan, and he listened to the record, and I told him what I was going for, this kind of West Coast fusion with the underground jazz tone. And he said that he loved what I was going for, but he didn't really think that I had gotten there yet. So he said, you know, we should just fly to Nashville and try and recreate it. And we left that week. He had this band that he loved from Brooklyn, and he got some amazing players from Nashville, and we just spent the month there. I rented a little farm in Mount Juliet and would drive in every day, so it was nice. We just had a real natural rapport, me and him and me and the band. And
you absolutely love Nashville, because I've yet to visit, but everyone I know who goes just loves it.
Loves it, right? Yeah, I did. I mean, I went in January, so it was really, really cold, which I wasn't expecting. I think because it was Midwest, I thought it was just going to be hot, and it was beautiful, but we were pretty isolated in his studio. It was funny because there's a lot of people from Brooklyn who have relocated there, and from California. It's interesting. It's not all cowboys.
And it's not all short shorts, you know, that there really is this kind of simmering underbelly to that side of life. What were the sort of key inspirations to get you to that place? You know, this woman, this artist who was kind of raised in New York and the surrounding area. What really captured your imagination about this?
I mean, sonically, it was pretty straightforward. Just kind of loving the Beach Boys, loving the Eagles. And I am imaginative, and I love all the stories about that kind of early Laurel Canyon scene, and also in the last 10 years, the kind of Laurel Canyon revival movement. That I had met a couple guys like Father John Misty and Jonathan Wilson, who had been really living a more bohemian lifestyle and just making art for art's sake and not worrying about the rest of it. And I mean, you know, I'm inspired just by really driving around. You know, I live off of Wilshire Boulevard, so it's one of the widest streets in California, and just driving around midnight, you know, and looking at the architecture, and I guess meeting some people too, like Mark Mahoney, who's an amazing tattoo artist. He's done a lot of my tattoos, and he did, like, you know, the early 90s rappers' tattoos, like Biggie and Tupac, and meeting people like him. You know, he's been through so much, but he's just like this effortlessly cool character, and has such a history in his face and in his attitude, and there's so many characters in California, I guess.
It's really underrated, the history of that place, you know, because it is a town that it really exists in the moment, and it's very much designed around creating, everyone who lives there is trying to create their moment, and so it's a very moment-filled city. But it is one of those, it's one of those places that does really have a lot of stories to tell. It's just that not many people like to share them.
And that's interesting. Yeah, I mean,
What really strikes me about you and listening to your music, and also the 2 times that we've spoken now, is that you you do go very, very deep into curiosity, into whatever you seem to be into, that you get to know the people, you want to discover the stories. True. There's no surface or face value here. But what's interesting for me is that people who normally do that, they become, I would say, cult status at best, because they're just immersed in it, regardless of whether anyone gets it. And yet you have, and I know you say it's not about the number ones and everything, but you have achieved this colossal amount of success, and yet is it a tough balance to be successful and have the pressures of that and play huge crowds and all this kind of stuff, but at the same time retain that sense of someone who wants to be surprised and wants to be curious and wants to be blown away by the weird?
I mean, God, that's such a cool way of putting it. It's funny, like, hearing you ask that, I think the hardest thing is just knowing that it's really more about knowing that people might not like it and might misunderstand it. I think what was interesting about putting out the first record and having so much analysis over it and a lot of it being not that great was that, in a way, I was even more on the free of, I don't know, music than before, you know, having kind of felt like I came from somewhere more outside and then put out a record and it, you know, sort of did well, but I still didn't really know anybody. And then, you know, I didn't really feel like, you know, people liked it or understood it. What was interesting writing the second one was I was almost just as anonymous and free to, like, explore as I was before, just because I still kind of was on the periphery. So, but I think it's interesting that you talk about, like, still having the ability to feel surprised. And that's when I really liked Dan, because I was so used to working with the same producers I had worked with for the last 4 years. Like, Dan was really a stranger to me. I didn't know anything about him, but he was very casual and spontaneous. So even though going off to Nashville doesn't seem like a really exotic thing to do, for me, it felt adventurous. I definitely didn't know what we were going to get.
You've touched on something that I'm really interested there. And, you know, you talked about kind of going to a place like Nashville and meeting someone like Dan and immersing yourself in a creative process in a place you didn't know with someone you didn't know. You know, musicians who consider themselves to be confident, well, they do that on every album. And it's instantly made me think, okay, where does confidence feature with you as an artist? And I don't want you to give away too much of the mystery of what you're trying to achieve within the music, but I wondered, are you a confident person with what you do, or can it be tough for you sometimes?
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's impossible to write a record if you don't feel really sensual about it and confident. And I think for me, like, what makes me confident changes every day. I guess at the point I met Dan, I didn't feel that confident. And it sounds strange, but him interested in me made me feel interesting again, because he was a guy and he just kind of treated me like this, you know, New Yorker girl who wanted to make a record and was like, hey, let's just see what happens. But he was in love with the songs. Like, that's another thing. I think your producer has to really be as in love with it and think that it could be, you know, a really big thing just for both of you. You know, maybe not culturally, but just for the both of you. Like, it could kind of be a milestone in your own lives. So for me, I guess it was really Dan just being interested that made me feel more passionate about it. But generally, I would say confidence for me just comes from being really happy. And that could be anything down to just my environment or being lucky enough to have my muse give me a really amazing melody.
You have, you know, really inspired your audience. And I know that people who are listening to this right now will be hanging off everything that you're saying. And are fascinated to know what you think, you know. And you laugh, and people do laugh, and it's totally appropriate to laugh, because it's human beings having a conversation. You've got to put it in perspective. But, you know, you've inspired people. Your music has captured their imagination. And you've done so very clearly with this direct vision in mind on each record, and the way that, you know, the videos are just phenomenal pieces of art. You know, the imagery, the photos, the album cover is just brilliant. It's timeless. All of it's really carefully done.
Thank you so much.
It really comes through, Lana, you know.
Yeah.
And I wondered, is it difficult, or do you ever feel that you need to sometimes turn Lana Del Rey off? Because it is something that you have created for an artistic purpose, which is integrally connected to who you are and what you're trying to say, but still, it is a process.
I mean, I think the reason why, you know, I started making music and the name Lana Del Rey was really just so I always had a vehicle to actually be exactly who I was, which is one thing I was upset about that kind of got, I don't know, I guess miscommunicated. Like, it was actually a way for me, I felt free enough to be myself, and that was my way of choosing to do that. So for me, like, it's a pleasure to be on all the time, but it doesn't really mean I'm in a character. It just means I can make art all the time, whether I'm at home or I'm far away. And so I don't ever really feel like I need to switch off a kind of a persona or a character because like who Lana Del Rey is who I really am.
Oh, I love that answer.
Even if I'm just reading a book.
I love that answer. It's like, just because you're born with a name and you're born into whatever your circumstances are, be good or be challenging isn't to say that you can't turn around at some point in your life and find a way to present yourself in a more meaningful way as you've learnt to go through life.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've met people just, in passing who have said, oh, you must be really happy. You're really lucky. You got to do what you wanted. And, I'm sorry that I never did that. And I always think like, oh, well, it's God. I mean, I would feel at any point in my life that it was never too late to just sort of switch into any different lane or any different vein, just to kind of be free enough to sort of explore things. I think that being worried about whether or not you're ever going to make money, I think that trips people up a lot. Like I've really learned that you can deny your circumstances and still be really grounded and live in your own inner world and kind of manifest that outwardly and still have like a real sense of normalcy.
I just have thoroughly enjoyed catching up with you again. I mean, it's been years since we spoke the first time when you were on a street in New York City. I think you were in Saks Fifth Avenue buying, I don't know, some kind of big hat for a race or something. I'm just joking. I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God. That's a long time ago. Oh, my God. It's really good to talk to you. Your questions they're just so interesting. And honestly, I can't thank you enough for supporting the record. I mean, you'll never know how amazing that is for me. It's awesome. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I'd love to have another conversation with you sometime and talk more about life and music. It's a pleasure, and I look forward to it, man. And have a great, great day. Thanks, Lana.
Definitely. Thank you.